You're listening to The Broken Meeple Show, a podcast that speaks passionately about board games for the benefit of those who play them. My name's Luke Hector, best known for the Broken Meeple YouTube channel, and I'm an everyday gamer just like you. And I'll be talking about reviews, top 10s, and just about anything that connects me to board games. As long as I have a tea or coffee in hand, that is. So grab a cup, relax, and enjoy. And remember, it's only a game. Howdy folks, this is Luke Hector on the 14th of November 2022 for another podcast episode. A little bit late this week as well, sorry about that, but I got a good reason, because this whole episode is based on that reason. Yes, I have been not only crazy busy with Essen titles to review. I mean, you'll have seen Flamecraft go up, you'll have seen Starship Captains go up, and, you know, in the future I've got to get 11 out. I've got, well, these are all to edit, right? 11 is ready to edit. Banner Festival is ready to edit. Wingspan Asia has just been recorded, as has the nesting box for Wingspan. So I've got 4 separate videos to edit. That's not including the fact that I need to do my Kickstarter video for this month in the next few days, because some projects are ending soon and I want to talk about various ones. So there's a lot of content to do, and also this podcast. So yes, I've certainly been very, very busy, but in a good way. It's just this is that time of year where it does get a little bit crowded. However, there is some good stuff on the horizon for the channel in general, because, you know, obviously that content is coming out. I will soon at some point get to do a top 10 two-player games and start that off, you know, because I've said I wanted to start that off very soon. But then also next Monday, All Aboard Gamer will be joining me. Specifically, you know, one of the duet, unfortunately, not both of them. But, you know, I will be joined and we'll be doing a top 10 together. And by request from the Patreons, this is the most voted one they wanted to see out of the list I put up, by top 10 overrated games. Oh yes, the overrated games is back. We're going to be having fun with that one. So, you know, people have spoken highly, both positive and negatively, on my previous one. It's going to be interesting, but, you know, we're going to stick to the last 5 years. So 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. You might think, well, isn't 2022 a little bit recent because it hasn't finished yet? There's still a few games this year that I can think of that are probably being a bit overhyped, but for the most part, it's going to be 2018 to 2021 for the most part. It's just if I include 2017, I include a few games that I've kind of already talked about a lot in the past. The idea of this is that I want to talk about games that I haven't talked about before, or at least for the most part haven't talked about before, and we should get an interesting set of 10. And of course, I have no idea what his set of 10 is going to be, so should be pretty good. But yeah, All Aboard Gamer, next Monday, I think it's 8 PM GMT, but there should be already a premiere date set on YouTube for it. Or maybe I need to actually set it up on StreamYard, actually. Maybe I need to do that. But like I say, keep an eye out for that. I will be putting it up soon, and so I hope you can tune in, regardless of where you're from. It's good to get those collaborations back. So, why have I been busy then? Well, I've been busy because of Gridcon. Gridcon 3. This is Paul Grogan's convention that he hosts basically by himself, along with Victoria and a couple of, a few other helpers. But yeah, he puts a lot of effort into this, like the rest of his content. Why don't more people watch his content? Seriously, get on it. But, you know, this was basically just over the weekend. So I got back last night. This was from Friday to Sunday. I even went on Thursday and played a couple of games on the Thursday evening, because I basically took my laptop to the venue and did work for the day. I had to get up at 6 in the morning to drive for 2.5 hours to get to Taunton so I could do work for a day. Oh, that was hard. But yeah, as I say, I slept like a log that night. But lots of sponsors, Games Law visit it, and mainly it's just turn up and play games. That's all it is. Turn up and play games. Nothing more fancy than that, except he does a huge charity raffle, and I will say it was huge. Yet again, I didn't win anything on it, because I never win anything useful on a raffle, ever. But, you know, a lot of people got some good games and some other games, but also a lot of money was raised for charity. At least about $4.5 grand or something, I think, was raised for charity. So, definitely worth the event. But he puts it together, and this time we were at the Holiday Inn in Taunton. So, Taunton, it's where I used to be from. Yeah, I used to be in Taunton. Taunton is my hometown. In fact, from the venue we were playing the convention at, you could literally go through the bus lane onto Hamilton Road and you'd be on my street. That was my old street. I could even go by and point the same house to you. I wonder if it's still, well, it must be still standing, but I wonder how much it's changed since I lived there. Cool. When did I move out of that? When I was 24? 24, and then I would have gone back to visit every now and again, but then in the last decade, my parents eventually sold the house and moved just outside of Taunton, but I've got my brother still lives in Taunton itself, and I still know some people in the area, so I do find myself coming back to Taunton every now and again to visit the family, and it's a little bit depressing to see how much it's kind of changed in some respects, particularly in terms of the high street and that, but, you know, it's still good to see that some people I know there are still going strong, and I can still at least go to Sheppy's, which is a cider farm. In fact, funny enough, my drink has a Sheppy's glass. Yeah. So I always make a pilgrimage to Sheppy's whenever I go back to Taunton and grab some more cider. So I've got a crate of it downstairs, but can't knock a decent glass of Sheppy's. The best cider in the UK, bar none. Sadly, this is just orange squash to keep throat from disintegrating since the weekend. It really was a touch and go. But yeah, this convention is a blast. If you want one of the most friendliest places to play games with other people and to just, to play a lot of Euros, particularly heavy Euros, but even light games are played there. It's not just heavy Euros, but, you want to get your copy of Brass Birmingham or Arc Nova or Imperial Steam or, but then you also want to play your game of Wingspan or, Heat or little filler games. You can play pretty much anything you like there, but it's just very friendly, well organized. The venue was good, food was decent. My room being next to a what do you call it? Next to the motorway was not helpful in terms of my sleep, but that might explain my slight, maybe over-rantiness when I was doing a couple of videos earlier. But all in all, it was still great. I love the food, love the fact we could get cheaper coffee there. It was like £1 of coffee as long as everyone used the honesty box. I hope that the hotel doesn't withdraw that next year, because I was certainly getting my money's worth for coffee by just putting £1 in every time. It was worth it. But yeah, got a lot of good games played, and that's what this episode is all about. I'm telling people about, well, it's kind of like not so much a praise Paul Grogan video. I mean, I'm saying obviously go watch his channel, because I think his videos criminally get too few views compared to a lot of other channels that do the same stuff as him but worse. So it's like, come on, go check out Paul Grogan's stuff. You owe him for a lot of rule books, okay? ISS Vanguard, you having good times playing that? You owe him for the rule book on that one. But this Gridcon is great. So the next one, I think he does it once a year now because it would be too much effort. So I believe that obviously it'll be 2023 before you see the next one, and probably not till later in the year. I don't think he's going to do one early in the year, and I probably don't recommend he does, because frankly he needs to take a break every now and again. But yeah, certainly Gridcon 4, I'll be back there, guaranteed. That's not going to change. But the reason I'm doing this podcast episode is because I want to talk about some of the games I play, because I played a lot of games for the first time there. And so some of them I may review in the future, but you never know when that will be. It could be ages yet. Some of them I may never review. So I just wanted to give my first impressions on a bunch of games, both good and bad, that I played, and just make this a kind of bonanza episode in a sense. So why don't we start with the first one? So we'll put me down in the corner there on the screen. Let's start with a fairly simple game, all right? Let's start with Village Rails. This is from Osprey Games, okay? My friend has bought this one recently, and funny enough, funny story, the publisher didn't send me Village Rails at first because they know that I don't like train games, and they thought I might not necessarily want this because it's got rails in the title. Now, they are right to fear me when it comes to train games, but I love Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride has trains in it, but it could be any mode of transportation. I mean, hell, they already did it with the small boxes. But this could be Village Rails, Village Boats, Village Airplanes, whatever. I couldn't care less. This isn't really thematic to trains. It's just the fact that they've used trains as the title and the type of artwork it is. But what this is an interesting little filler game. Well, I say filler, maybe not quite filler. It's not really a 30-minute game. I mean, you could do it in there, I suppose, but you're talking somewhere between I'll say 45 minutes to an hour is probably more likely. But this is a cool little card tableau building game, and it borrows a little bit from their other game, Village Green, where you had a tableau grid of cards that you were placing down with objectives around the edge, but depending on how you put cards down, it could tank your efforts elsewhere and stuff. It was a really nice little filler game, but I don't think I have it anymore. Village Rails builds on that to an extent. What happens is you have these track cards and these trip cards. The trip cards are scoring opportunities and the tracks are the tracks. I mean, it kind of gives you a bit of a Sprawlopolis feel there. And the idea is that you select one or two, or one of each, or one of... Sorry, I am really mincing my words here. You can pick from either pile or both piles, right? And you take the one furthest from the deck. The cards are double-sided, so there's plenty of different trip cards and plenty of different types of tracks. But in small world style, if you want to skip ahead, you have to put money down on each card that you skip, and you take the one that you want. So it's that classic drafting system that we know from of old, and money can be quite tight in the early run. But what you're essentially doing is you're building a grid of yourself. So, oh yeah, there's Village Green. There you go. Village Green in there. So it's different designer, but it's same publisher and definitely that kind of same artist, I believe, actually. But essentially, you have this grid in front of you, and it's going to be a 3x4 grid. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 3x4 grid, and that will not change. You have to stick to that 3x4 grid and build adjacent to something you've already placed. The trip cards will go around the outside of the grid, but you can put them down in whichever order it is you see fit. And the idea is that you're putting the tracks down in such a way to connect rail lines. So the rail lines are on the edge of the board, and they will extend out via the cards that you're placing down. And so the cards have got various things like direct points, or an icon that scores at the end of the game for how many you have, one that scores exponentially more for signals on the same track, and so on and so forth. But they're basically, it's icons and different types of terrain, and you're trying to make the track as lucrative as possible. And so when the track eventually finishes, you total up the points based on what stuff's on the track, the symbology, and the trip cards that you have. But then also, you have this terminus card, which basically, if you meet the criteria, even at its lowest level, you'll get a little bit of money. But the more you meet the criteria, the more money you get. And money is tight, and so, being able to do a line that not only scores you a bunch of points, but gets you a bunch of money is great. But maybe you tank the points a bit in order to get more money, or maybe you accept that you're not going to get a lot of money, but you made a very lucrative line, whether it was 2 cards or went across your entire grid, who knows? And so, it's a really cool, tense little game where you're constantly trying to fend off the opponents who are like, oh, don't take the card I want, don't take the card I want, oh, why'd you take my card? But you're also trying to keep your money reserves handy, because if you run out of money, you're going to struggle to buy these trip cards because they cost 3 coins a piece, plus how much you skip over. And you're probably trying to grab the cards you want, but you might not have enough money to do so, and it hurts, but then other people are grabbing the cards you want, and there's a lot of tension, particularly if you were to play this with 4 players. Wow, I mean, we were playing with 3, and it still felt pretty tense. The artwork is beautiful. It's some very nice, I mean, it's, there's nothing much in the way of detail, but there's a, very pretty, pretty stuff there, and it looks the part on the board. Yeah, it's about trains. Whatever. The artwork's nice, and honestly, this could have been about any mode of transportation and the game would still work. But this is a cool little filler. Well, maybe not filler. It's a 45-minute game, maybe an hour for your first time or with 4 players, but it's a short game, but it's a clever little game. It builds upon what Village Green had and just adds a little bit more meat to the palette, but I like the fact that you've got those terminus cards. I think they're a cool addition. I like the fact it comes with a dial. I mean, yes, it's the most basic looking dial in the world with very basic numbers on it. But honestly, I think more games need to come with these little dials to calculate score or hit points and stuff like that, because this can't be that expensive to make. I mean, you take about 5 minutes to assemble these things, and then they may look basic and just be basically cardboard, but it allows you to record score without the use of tokens or a pen and pad or anything. Honestly, this is a cool little thing. Yes, it looks cheap, but it's functional. And Osprey games aren't really known for their aesthetics. They're generally known for being functionally decent games. But honestly, the artwork on this is pretty beautiful, to be honest. For an Osprey game, it's quite pretty. And we know that some of their stuff usually doesn't go down that route. But Village Rails looks pretty. Village Green was even prettier. That was just a very pretty game. So this was cool. I think I can... Let's see. Somebody... Yeah, my other friend beat us both, but I tied with my friend, so the one who has the game like himself. And yeah, I enjoyed this. I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I wasn't expecting to love it, and like I said, I don't love it, but I think it's good. I like it. I would happily play this again. Would I own it? Probably not. I think I might slightly prefer Village Green, but I think this was a pretty solid title, and I definitely recommend it for anybody who wants a small, compact game that packs a lot of punch in it, actually. This is one of those bang for your buck games, I'd say. You know, it doesn't cost very much, but there's plenty enough thinkiness in there, plenty enough tactics, and just a lot of turn angst of, oh, I really want a card that fits in there, but if I do, I'm going to lose out there. Do I wait? Do I get some trip cards and then get the tracks? Ah, what am I supposed to do? And you go at different rates, which is pretty cool. So it's an interest, well, not at different rates. You always get a track card, but then you may get a trip card. So you're going to be building up your train tracks, but then do you splash out and get those trip cards, or do you save your money so you can get the best tracks, but then lose out on points? Great little balancing system. But yeah, I was pretty impressed with this. Village Rails. All right, take a little swig. Let's move on to, I'm just going to very briefly talk about this next one. Deal with the Devil. I am doing a first impressions video of this soon. Why am I doing a first impressions video and not a review? Because the biggest problem with this game is that this isn't really a game you can play 5-6 times in order to do a full review of it, because it's a very niche game. This was my most anticipated game from Essen for a while, but then the more I read about it, the more that kind of went down my list. Same designer as Alchemist, which is a very, very cool thematic game, but a very heady game, a very sort of fiddly game, a lot of stuff in the box, like worker placement with a massive deduction game on top. And I thought, oh no, is this going to go down that route as well? Well, yes and no. You essentially have 4 of you, and you must have 4 of you, 2 mortals, 1 cultist, 1 devil. It's hidden roles, which I like, and that is probably my favorite aspect of the game. But each round you're trying to get resources and build buildings in your medieval village while gaining reputation with the church, but you're trying to stay hidden if you are the devil or the cultist, and you're trying to basically have the most points at the end by way of the buildings and micromanaging your resources. You've also got these inquisitor cards that you have to fend off every now and again, who, unless you have your soul intact, they're going to give you a hard time. But what happens is that it's all done with an app. So the app basically has you have these little crates where you got to be careful how you assemble them. If you assemble them badly, you could tank your own game here. But once you've got them done, they hold the resources and the bits of soul, and every role has their own different chest with the tokens that should be in it and what they can ask for. You use these to offer trades to other players, but you don't directly give your chest to the players. You collect them all up, they're all identical, you shuffle them all together, and then the app, which I don't know if there's going to be a picture here that shows it off, basically you scan the QR code at the bottom of it, and it tells you which player to give it to. There is a semi-random way that the app does it. It's not entirely random, there is a structure to it, but it will ensure that certain characters see certain boxes at times. And basically, when you look at the crates, you're accepting or rejecting the offers that you've got. So you're sort of wheeling and dealing, getting resources, giving money, playing action events and stuff. And it's a pretty neat game. Bit long, 3 odd hours is pretty lengthy, and it's a bit of a rules overhead to get across. But this isn't a game I think I can play multiple times. It's a very fragile niche game. You need the 4 players or nothing, basically. But you need 4 people that are into games. You can't play this with casual players. You need to play this multiple times with the same group, because the value of a trade is a little bit easier to dictate, but the value of a soul? What's the value of a soul? If you let the devil get away with murder effectively, then the devil's just going to completely run away with it. Playing the mortals seems to be the hardest there. I mean, I won as the devil just against the cultist. The mortals got completely creamed. So, maybe they gave me a few bits of soul too early for too cheap. I don't know. But it's not something that I could see myself wanting to teach every time I play it with a new set of players. I think it would just unbalance itself. And so I am going to do first impressions on this in more detail. But for now, know that I enjoyed it. The Dice Tower played it wrong when they did their video and then gave it really low scores. I'm not at that point where I would say it deserves those low scores. But this is a very specific type of game, and you need to be a very specific gamer with a very specific group to get the most out of it. Otherwise, it's one that you should probably skip. That's just my kind of edited highlights, but I will do a video explaining in a bit more detail how the game went and, let me know. But I was just glad to finally get it played, because I thought, where else other than the convention am I going to get it played? But that's Deal with the Devil. Wait and see for my first impressions video on that. All right, let's go. I don't know. Shall we go to positive? Shall we go more positive or more negative? Let's go fully positive. All right, fully positive with this one. God, I hate it when other people are right. You know me. I don't buy into hype trains, okay? I hate it when channels hype up games before they're released. I hate it when everyone's saying, ooh, this is the best game of the year, best game of the year, best game of the year. Now, granted, I have played games like Ark Nova that had a similar hype front and gone, this is the best game of the year, and made it one of my favorite games of all time. They do come around. But most of the time, I'm always thinking, I'll play it myself and make my own thoughts, thank you very much. I mean, even Ark Nova, I was looking forward to it, but I was going to say, look, Ark Nova is one that I'm going to try, okay? I will try it, then I'll say it's one of my favorite games ever. And I mean that sincerely for this next one, Revive. Yes, everybody has been telling me crazily to go play Revive. But at Essen, it was €80, and you had to queue for ages to get it. I don't like queuing. Queuing is boring. And I don't like spending €80 on a standard size game. €80. That's a lot. Sorry, Lacrimosa was already too expensive at 70, given that it's going to retail for about 45. So, sorry, €80, you're not getting my money for that. But still, I was glad that at Gridcon, it was being played by a few people and somebody was able to teach me the game in full. So I sat down for a 4-player game. Now, 90 to 120 minutes. Yeah, right. Okay, we took 3 hours. Now, granted, I reckon we could have done it in 2.5. But we did get a setup rule wrong where we accidentally did something with the cards where it meant that we elongated the game by about 20-25 minutes. So we could have possibly done it in about 2.5. I think 90 minutes is pushing it, although saying that we played it with 4. So maybe 2 hours is actually pretty doable with a certain amount of players. But with 4, it's going to be tight. But I have played it, right? I have played it. And people are going to be wondering what my thoughts are. Is it worth all the hype? Everyone's saying it's the best game ever. Is it that good, Luke? Tell us now, Luke. Tell us that it is the best game ever. Revive is actually pretty damn good. Yes, it actually really is pretty good. Excellent, I think, in fact. It is definitely one of my favorites I have played this year, and I'm being honest in those thoughts. Now, it's not without its flaws. I think that some people have glossed over a few flaws with this game, but the majority of this game is great. Now, firstly, there is pretty much no theme in this game. This is dry as a bone, so if you think this whole idea of, saving civilization and exploration and all that is going to be the thematic thing for you, don't. This is 100% mechanical. But the mechanical stuff is really, really good. So essentially what happens is you have a main board with a kind of set of tiles that you explore. So you go out and explore with buildings and meeples, and you flip them over, you find other spaces to build your buildings on or put your meeples on, and ideally you want to get points or find certain hexes that when you build next to them, they up your technology tracks somehow, whatever, as I say, theme schmeme, but get to the corners and there's some tiles with point scoring opportunities depending on what you're doing. But that's what you're doing on the map. What you also have is a player board that has some unlockables, such as a specific faction ability to make life a little asymmetrical, but also asymmetrical. You have the meeples that you can put down on the board, unlock different bonuses that you can get, or different player-specific special powers. So there's that aspect on your player board. But then you've also got this thing, oh my word, this very scary looking technology track board. This houses your resources in the bottom corner. It's got a point track on the left, which is just generic points for getting more technologies. But then these 3 tracks are technology tracks. And it may look complicated as all get out, but it's actually more straightforward than you think. even though I kept missing what I could unlock and what I couldn't. Basically, you have 3 tracks. They start at 1, and every time you get an advance, the numbers. When you get to a point where there's a circle next to the number, you unlock a different technology and you can stick it in. There's a couple of starter ones, but other ones you get will be from a drafted set of tiles, so you can have a very different technology track to other people. The reason I kept making mistakes is because some of these technologies require you to level up on multiple tracks. So this one here, I need to get to level 3 in grey, but then I also need to get to level 7 in yellow before it unlocks. I kept missing that when I was going through, and it is easy to miss some of them. I mean, there's a few on this board which are like, yay, I've unlocked it now. Oh man, I barely saw that tiny little bit of path sticking out from the other side into yellow, and so I had missed a few on that. But that little blemish aside, you'll get used to it. But the technologies are cool because you've got some point scoring opportunities at the end, some other ways to get artifacts which are more point scoring objectives during, but it's cool to level this thing up. The resource tracker, again, pretty good. But here's the other aspect I haven't even mentioned. You've got these card slots. 1 you have to unlock here, and 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. This is hands down my favorite aspect of this game, because these use these cards, and these cards all look the same, which is a bit of a shame, actually. I wish they'd actually spent a bit more on the artist and got them to do unique artwork, but basically these are the 3 pictures you'll see on all the cards, and that's a bit of a shame. But there's a top bonus and a bottom bonus as well, and the idea is that when you slot the cards underneath or on top, and this is not dual layer, I'm afraid, at least not for the card slots, so you have to just put them underneath or on underneath the board itself. You get the top bonus if you slide them under the top of the board. You get the bottom bonus if you slide them under the bottom part of the board. But you can also upgrade these slots with these tiles that give you little bonuses if you play a certain color card to the slot. And you can get up to 3 in these top ones and up to 2 in these other ones. So you can really make some slots super powerful, or you can diversify your board in such a way. But these cards effectively are multi-use cards. And honestly, is it now the new fad that cards have got to be top slot and bottom slot? Because Lisboa does it, but then Lacrimosa also did it. And now this one is doing it. I have a feeling that top and bottom slotting of cards is going to be the next new thing, but multi-use cards are always good, and I always enjoy them. But this decision process of how you can best use these cards and create an efficient engine and unlock cool stuff is really rewarding, and it's just such good fun. And you only do 2 actions on your turn, so you've got about 5 or 6 to pick from, but you only do 2. So your turns should be relatively quick, at least to begin with, because there's only so much you can do with 2 actions. You might think, well, I need to get over there and build on that tile. Well, that might take me 4 to 6 actions to do, and so I'm just building up my short-term plan in that respect. Although some turns can get quite lengthy when you start chaining off some ridiculous bonuses on cards and tiles, and if that person happens to be prone to AP, you are going to be sat there for a while. There is a bit of downtime in this game. If you play with a group who's familiar with it and there's no AP players, the turn will come back round to you faster than you think, and with 2 or 3 players, I could see this being really, really good fun. 4, maybe it outstays its welcome a little bit with 4, because 3 hours was kind of pushing it a bit. I was kind of waiting for it to finish once it got past the 2.5 hour mark. I think it needed to be a little bit shorter, but 2 to 2.5 hours is not too bad. You're certainly doing a lot in this game. You're doing a lot of actions. It's not like you're just doing 9 actions and then the game's over. No, you get plenty of stuff to do, but there's just a lot of cool stuff to juggle around. I mean, when do I use my cards? When do I use my main abilities? When do I build buildings? Where do I build buildings? Which direction do I explore? Do I need to find water tiles, or should I get more cards? The card upgrades you get with better cards, they all look juicy. Shall I get some of these tiles to slot into my board? Shall I go up the technology tracks? Which technology tracks shall I do? Shall I hibernate, which is get all your stuff back and refresh your cards, and then get a bonus, but also unlock everything so you can go again? How often do I hibernate? There's a lot of opportunities in this game, a lot of tactical choices, but also an underlying strategy for, okay, I'm going to unlock these bits and I'm going to level up this bit of the technology track. I'm going to aim for purple cards because purple or whatever. I'm going to aim for beige cards because I've got the power that gives me points for beige cards. Why not? And so it's just a really cool collection of different paths to victory, as well as unlocks that feel rewarding. Like, it's one of those, what's the phrase they use? It's like what you got in Gallerist and Kanban. Like every time you do something, you get a little bonus for doing it. It's positive enforcement or positive reinforcement, something like that. And so, yeah, when you do something in the game, you feel like you've got a nice little something for it. You know, if you're inefficient, then maybe you'll paint yourself in a corner where you can't do so much, but you've got the emergency switch you can use once every hibernation to give yourself a resource. Or if you're short by one resource, then there's your emergency button. But it's not to be overlooked. It can actually be more efficient than playing a whole card if necessary, just for the one thing you need. But the card system, having a few on display, the way the board's designed, there's a lot of care that's gone into this, and I really did enjoy my play of this. I reckon this would be good on something like Board Game Arena as well. You know, Tabletop Simulator might be a bit of a mess, but I'd be curious to know if there's a good mod for it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'd love to see what it's like one player. Now, the whole campaign thing or whatever they put in it is a waste of space. I mean, this game has less rules overhead than I thought it did. I was expecting to be there for a massive long teach, but a lot of this stuff is kind of familiar territory for someone like me who's played a lot of heavy Euros. And so I didn't have too much trouble with it. And by the time we were finished teaching, it's like, oh, now we did have to look up the rulebook quite a bit because there was some iconography that wasn't quite as intuitive, and you know, some of the rules were like, hang on, let me just see how that works and that. So there was a bit of rulebook checking, but I reckon that after one play you'll get this game down, and then you'll be intrigued to try a different faction with a different board and a different setup of tiles, and grab different cards and grab different, you know, tiles to play. Is the replay value strong? Maybe. I mean, the cards are kind of generic resources and abilities for the most part, but the technologies, which ones you pick and which ones you get during the game, could really shape up some interesting strategies. The tiles on the map, the artifacts, which give you 3 different ways to score, but the more artifacts you get, the bigger the multiplier. There's a lot going for this game, and Porter games are a mixed bag for me. They're usually either really, really good or really, really meh. Automania is a great game. It's on my shelf. The Magnificent was pretty bland, pretty boring. I've got no interest in whatever that oil rig one was. I forget what it was called, offshore rig or something. That doesn't look like something I would enjoy. They made a half-decent roll and write. I know there was another game I really liked from them, but I can't remember for the life of me what title it was. It was a long time ago. But this one is up there with the Automania. You know, well, Automania's, I prefer this to Automania, but like I say, it's one of those games that I can sing the praises of and say, this is a really, really good game. Now, this is based on first impressions, okay? So this is not a full review saying you must go out and buy this game, because remember, it can be quite long. You know, it can easily get to the 3-hour mark if you're not careful. Even though we made the rules mistake, 4 players could easily take this to 3 hours. There's definitely, you know, a decent amount of components and decent sort of, well, the artwork's fairly generic. I mean, I like the artwork on the cards, but the rest of this artwork is kind of basic. It just looks nice on the table. Mainly, it's the design of the boards that I really like. The way that the cards go underneath the board, and the things go in the slots, and the little switch, and the counters. You know, there's some basicness to some of the components, but there's a lot of good functional cleverness that's gone into some of these designs. And the other thing to mention is that €80, that was expensive. This game is not a deluxe Kickstarter game, okay? This is a normal game that should be released as it is, without funky components and that. €80 doesn't quite justify the price for this game. As much as I want to get a copy, €80 is a bit much. So when it comes out in retail, I hope to get a copy of this, albeit at a much cheaper price. You know, I reckon that's somewhere, I mean, you get a lot of stuff in it and that, so somewhere in the 60s I'd be happy to pay. Ideally, I think it should be somewhere in the 50s, but somewhere in the 60s I would pay that kind of money to get a copy of this, but not £70, not £80. You know, that sort of area is just, no, that's way too expensive for a game that's not exactly deluxeified or sprawling with content. It's just got a decent amount of replay value and is a genuinely good game. But yeah, Revive is good. I really enjoyed it, so I'm keen to, you know, play it some more and maybe do a review in the future, but it just may be a while before I ever do that. So just know that it's a cool game. Could it be on my top 10 of the year? That depends on whether it gets released on retail before I do my top 10. This might, if it doesn't get released until God knows when, it might have to just be one of those games that appears on the retrospective list in the future. But suffice to say, I'm excited to play this one more. Revive. So, okay, let's take a swig out of my shippy squash. Sweet medicine for the throat. Alrighty, we've got a couple more games to talk about. So let's. Oh no, we've got 3 more games. All right, well let's go with the meh game. Okay, well I say meh, good but problems. I'm probably going to review this game, but it will be a while because it's not a review copy that I got. I bought it with my own cash, and I'm not expected to do a review from it. I mean, I've got to do Vengeance Roll and Fight first for them, and I really need to get on with that. But the other game from Mighty Boards, Hamlet, I got to play. Got to play a 3-player game of this. Now, this is done from the same designer as Pursuit of Happiness, so this made me quite excited, as did the whole idea of building a village that was communal. Okay, that sounded pretty good. Now, the gameplay is, for the most part, really good. Okay, I like the fact that you're using the communal map and sharing resources and building these tiles, and the village will look different every single time. Well, the hamlet will look different every single game. But there are some issues I had with it. Firstly, the Founders Edition makes this big deal of having this 3D cathedral that you build. Except, as you can see from the picture here, it's pretty chintzy, it doesn't look that great, and it blocks line of sight to everything around it. So what was the point? It was a waste of time assembling this stupid thing. But the other problem, another problem I had was that the turn order could literally mess you up without even trying. You go on these different tiles and you can move your meeples around and you share resources, but you can also replenish the resources in areas and get money for doing so. I had 3 rounds in a row where basically one player used a bunch of resources of these tiles. The next player replenished them all and got a ton of money, and I could do nothing because I didn't have the money and the resources were there, but without money I couldn't do much else. And so turn order screwed me over. I had no way of avoiding it. It's not like I played badly, it was just sucks to be you, 3rd in order. And that happened more often than not, where just bad timing meant that I couldn't do stuff. And that doesn't feel rewarding. And this is a bit of a race style game, so if you fall behind, then you're going to struggle to pull it back. I mean, I got to 3rd place, but thankfully I managed to close the gap quite significantly. But that was mainly down to some really good selection of tiles. That was not down to dumb luck or anything. That was, I had to work to get to that, and I still lost outright. But you get more workers in this game with money, and donkeys with money that you use to ferry goods around, and if you get those early, you have a considerable advantage over everybody else in the game. More actions enables you to pull off combos, enables you to put stuff down and use it and get it out of the way before anybody gets a chance to even touch it. And so it just creates a rich get richer feel with this game. And so if you fall behind, you might as well just cut yourself out of the running. You can consider yourself pseudo knocked out, and that's a bit of a downer. But that's not even the worst problem of the game, because I enjoyed the communal aspect. Some of the components are chintzy. I think this insert is kind of terrible, but it's there, it does the sort of job. I can't believe that they originally wanted you to put these weird triangular shaped tiles and hexagons in a bag and shuffle them around. I'm so glad they put these tokens in with the names on it. And I love the fact that when you grab a tile from the buying order, it then puts the various other related tiles into the bag so that you can draw them out and the village appears different. This is all good stuff, okay? So whoever was in charge of some of the graphic design, but particularly the size, is there a job for determining the size of games? I don't know. But for whatever reason, in the effort to make this a relatively small box, which they really did not have to do, a standard Ticket to Ride size box would have done well here. This game is too friggin' small. You are trying to squint at this map, and have a look at this picture and see if you can actually tell much from here. But you've got to see what the various places do, and that's the biggest version I've seen, this market. But then you need to see these tiny little resources. You need to tell the colors apart. You need to look at the different meeples, and there's meeples and colors all over the place. You've got yellow, blue, green, and red or something trying to blend in with forest tiles and mountain tiles and greenery all over the place. But then you've got little flags on there, and then you've got these things are meant to be in segments. So when you place a tile next to another, you connect up segments. Do you know how you tell a segment apart? Can you see these tiny little green splodges on the corners of a tile? That represents a segment, but then it's not always the corner of a tile. If you look on the triangle, you'll notice that this one has technically 4 segments in it. One there, one there, one there you can't even see, and another one there. it is you are squinting at this game a ton. It is too small. Doesn't take up much space on the table, but by doing so, they make it unwieldy to play. You can't sit that close to each other, and if you've got bad eyesight, you are going to struggle with this game like no other. It's just going to drive you nuts. You thought Tang Garden was like, badly designed in that way. This one just takes the cake. And I can't get why they did it. Now, this could be a phenomenal solo game. And I haven't tried solo mode in it yet, and I intend to do so. And obviously I want to get it played more, but I've got very big tables at my club. I can't go on my big sponsored table at Dice Portsmouth and play this game. It will not work. It'll be far too small for the table. And so, what else am I supposed to do with it, apart from go on a really titchy table? I don't get why they made it so small, so constrained. Why didn't they just make these tiles huge? You could have done it you did it on Kickstarter. You could have made these tiles extra large or something and done it in a proper sized box. Just feels like that was an afterthought, but it's such a critical afterthought that I can't believe they didn't do it. Especially for a game that will cost you a good $60 to buy in a Founders Edition. Now, granted, that means the retail version will be fairly cheap, and maybe that's something to say about it. The fact that it will be a cheaper game, but cheap comes at a price, even if it's cheap. That's a bad metaphor, but just having to squint so much to look at what's going on these tiles and try and see all these colors blended together. I mean, if you're colorblind, good luck. You cannot play this game if you are colorblind. Seriously, you just can't. I don't know how a colorblind person could even remotely manage this. It is just a smorgasbord of color all over the place, some of which blends in too easily. So I enjoyed it. I have some reservations over playing it with 3, and I suspect 4 will just compound the issue. I hear that 2-player is a lot better, the back and forth. I think that will work fine. But honestly, I want to try this solo using the Turksy solo mode in it and see if that elevates my view. But yeah, this one is, considering this had the most thumbs on the Board Game Geek anticipation list for Essen, I'm surprised that this one is got so many problems as it does for something that had the most thumbs. This is what happens when you buy into a hype train. But we'll see. Maybe the rest of it will wow me. I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly keen to try it solo, and if the solo mode blows me away, then I might just be able to recommend this as a solo mode game, because then at least you can actually see what it is you're doing, because otherwise you can't. Oh well, more on that another time. Right. Do we go for... Let's go for rant. Well, it's not full on rant. I don't hate this game, but... Coffee traders, and yes, the keen-eyed among you will notice the 5 out of 10 rating I've given for this game, because it's average. I don't hate it, but I was kind of expecting better. I was certainly expecting more theme, put it that way. But it's Capstone Games, they don't always go for theme. And this is an interesting game because it's big, it's got a lot of stuff in it, and it's like 3 to 4 hours to play, and it's pretty complex. Although not necessarily from a rules overhead perspective, it's more just complex from everything that's going on in the game. I mean, this is a super heavy game through and through. But I thought that this was going to give me a good feeling of coffee and growing coffee and making coffee and selling it off. And then I found out a bit more about the game, and it's like, oh, okay, no. It's really not like that. You have plantations, yes, they're all basically the same. You have these different tracks here, the Arabica track. I kept mispronouncing it deliberately on the time. I was calling it the Arabic track at one point. I called it the Arabiata track at one point, which I thought was quite funny. But basically, these are the types of coffee you can make, and they're all generic as all get out. Yes, it is just colors. That is it. You spend a lot of time just basically putting a tile on the grid to say they'll spawn this many beans and leveling up this track here, these tracks, just to get rewards. Generic as all get out. You play over 3 rounds. Each round lasts about an hour. It takes a long time to play this game, and we took longer because obviously we had to learn it and we were, taking our time and stuff like that. But yeah, this is a 3 to 4 hour game, y'all. It's pretty insane. But then you've got this board in front of you, which is very much a kind of almost like a Terra Mystica style board. So you've got these places here, and when you take them off, you get little bonuses. So it's very much a remove it from your board to get more stuff. But you only have about 9 to 12 actions in this game, really, because you got these free action cubes. You get one bonus one that you can use once in the game, and you might be able to use a bonus one each round, but at the expense of using other bonus stuff, which frankly is more useful, such as the money and the trader. But yeah, you're getting about 9 to 12 actions on average in this game. That's it, for 3 to 4 hours. Have fun. Perseverance was like that. This is no different. And the actions are pretty basic. I mean, you put a plantation down. Great. You spawn some workers on them. Great. You buy yourself a donkey. Great. And you put a cat on the board, which literally just means it makes a wild seed for you. That's it. There's your 4 actions. Pretty basic. Most of the time is spent because you have to spend ages in the worker phase and the trader and contractor phase and then the harvest phase and then the refresh phase and then the contract phase, or that comes before, whatever. And it takes forever to go through these phases. And that's, yes, you do make more decisions and do more stuff in those phases. But yeah, in terms of action choices, not a huge amount of them in this game, really. But then all you're basically doing is building these occasional buildings, which, you know, I didn't realize that these points weren't cumulative, so that scuppered me a little bit. But I think I came second only by like 3 points, so I did pretty well. But literally all I did was Munchkin Brazil. So I was just leveling up a ton of green beans because all my contracts needed green beans. And these are the contracts. There's a little tile here with a letter, 3 colors with shapes in them, and a number. That's your contract, people. This is your board. And you're basically, and look, more tracks. But that's not even the worst track of all. You know, well, actually, we'll get onto that track in a minute. I will at least say some positives before ranting about this. It is a looker. It does look very pretty on the table. For as boring as, you know, generic tracks are, and the dullness and dryness of just leveling them up, it is a pretty looking thing. I mean, that, you know, it's got a wooden table there and the coffee stuff to make it look a bit better, but the board itself and, you know, the pieces that you have, it's good quality. It's a quality made game, and the graphic design is pretty solid as well. So, you know, I gotta give props for that. And you get these like cheap little metal coins. The rulebook is horrible. This is the coffee trading handbook. It is a garbage rulebook. It's not written very well. It's boring. It's bland. And trust me, the guy had to, I think, get some revised rules off the internet in order for us to learn this game. It really is a poorly written rulebook. I would hate to be learning this from that. But the main thing is that I just found this kind of average. The main sort of highlights is that you get to piggyback off other players for certain actions. So there is a little bit more interactivity in this Euro than others, but mainly it's just a case of area control where you're trying to control like the majority of spaces in each region. But each region is identical, so whatever. I mean, Brazil is basically the same as Colombia, which is the same as Guatemala. It's just the color of track you want to level up. And so the main bit of fun, really, is the piggyback part, where when your traders go out to various regions to get beans, which is basically every worker spawns 2 beans, and then the beans are distributed among everybody who wanted to go trade there in a specific turn order. And so if somebody goes there, you can decide if you want to piggyback off them. Same for a building. Someone builds something, do you want to piggyback and build the same building? That's basically it. That's the main part of interaction anyway. The rest of it is doing your own thing with your tracks. But you see this track on the right hand side board here? Guess what that does? I don't know. It doesn't even have a name on the board. There's no name for this track. At least you know these are harvest tracks and storage tracks. I don't know what this is. To this day, I still don't know what the name of this track is. But what do, you grab these little chits off the board with different colors and symbols on them, and you put them on the track, and you try to get different ones, because otherwise they don't move up, they stack, but then you can split a stack of certain ones to make it move up anyway, and it is the most generic, mechanical, Steffenfeld style thing I've ever seen pasted onto a game that's supposed to be a thematic game about, well, it's not meant to be a thematic game, but, you know, a game that could be thematic about trading coffee. If you covered up the words coffee trader and didn't use the bean icon for your graphic design, you would literally not be able to tell that this was a game about making coffee. It is that themeless. That was already a put off. This bit down here is technically the Starbucks board, where you're selling coffee to various places. And so if you sell 4 blue or 4 lilac, yeah, if you're colorblind, have fun, 5 green, 5 or whatever, you put your token on it, and it's basically the Lisboa chart. The international chart, you know, from that game. no, not Lisboa, Gallerist. It's the Gallerist International Market, where you put the stuff in the columns, you get a little bonus, and then at the end of the game, majority in the column scores points, ranked by the one at the furthest at the bottom or something. That's literally all that is. It's just a way to get a little bit of money. So the game is brain burny. It is thinky. There's certainly a lot to plan ahead for. So it's definitely going to scratch a good itch for some heavy Euro gamers. But it's 3 to 4 hours, y'all, for not that many actions, and for the dullness of just, let's build some buildings and move some cubes up a few tracks and spend those track cubes and then just make a little bit of points and then see who's got the most. And I controlled all of Ethiopia. That was fun, I guess. The dryness of this game just puts me off, and there's not even that many paths to victory, because you're kind of doing the same thing, really. You all have to get beans and sell them off. Are you going heavy on the coffee bar bit that I just mentioned before, or are you going heavy on the Arrabbiata track or whatever? Fine. But you got to get fairly high on the Arrabbiata track, and for the most part, most people get pretty high on it by the end, so the point differential for most of this game isn't even that high. Mainly, the points are differentiated by the area control, which contributes quite a sizable amount to what you're doing, but also the buildings that you've made. The track at the end, that weird track, doesn't really make much sense. It doesn't even score you that much on top of everybody else. The game's not terrible, but it's average. I can't say enough good things about it to say it's good, but then I can't say enough bad things about it to say it's bad. It's just a bland game. It got me thinking, and I'm glad I played it. I'm glad I crossed it off my bucket list. But this isn't a game I can see myself being excited to play again. If it hits the table, I'll play it, with people that I know who reasonably will pick up the game quite quick in that. But you need to get yourself a set of revised rules, because we did a fair bit of rules book checking, and you just need to know that this is a pretty dry game that just has coffee slapped on the title, and it's well produced. That's basically the deal. It's got the makings of what, I don't know if this was a Kickstarter game, but it's got the makings of one all over it. My friends loved it to bits. They really enjoyed it, particularly one in particular. I foresee that if he doesn't get it himself, he's definitely going to try and want to get it played as often as possible. But for me, yeah, it did what I kind of expected it to do. It functions fine. It's going to appeal to some people, but I want a proper thematic. Give me a viticulture theme style game for coffee. That'd be great. Is that too much to ask? Especially from someone like Capstone Games? Oh well, like I say, 5 out of 10, whatever. So finally, right, after another swig, we're going to talk for a few minutes about Unconscious Mind. Oh yes, I finally got to play this one. Now, this one was a bit of a weird one, because 2 people had watched a playthrough that Paul Grogan had done. Another person had watched some other playthrough, and I hadn't had a chance to do either, so I had to read from the Kickstarter rulebook almost verbatim. Not to other people. I read it verbatim and expressed it in proper words to others. I seem to be pretty good at doing that with rulebooks. But this is the next one from Fantasia Games. It's got 2 different artists, one for the real world, one for Dreams. It's, including Vincent Dutrait and Andrew Bosley, both of which are great artists. Johnny Pack is one of the designers, among others. And it's, coming after Endless Winter. The hype train for this is ridiculous. And that put me off it at first, because the first few words I was hearing about this was the same people saying the same stuff, where everything is the best game of 2023, etc., and the game hasn't even finished on Kickstarter yet. For crying out loud, let the game even finish development before you start calling it the best game of 2023, people. This is what I hate about Kickstarter hype. It's such a pain. So naturally, I want to try this and give you my thoughts. And you're probably thinking, is he going to do the same as Revive, where, he has this anti-Kickstarter hype, but then it's like, turns out to be one of the best games he's played? This one is good. Not great, good. But it's gonna need some more time. This has had some rules changes, some small rules changes since the first prototype was done, and even the rulebook I was reading had some updates to it. But the idea with Unconscious Mind is that you're basically psychologists, and it's all based on sort of Sigmund Freud time. In fact, he's even going around the map. And essentially what you're doing is you're curing patients of various mental ailments, griefs or whatever, catharsis and all this terminology I'd barely even heard of before. And what happens is you've got this player board here with speech tokens, which I swear were airlifted straight out of Kanban. for workers, effectively. It's worker placement. And what you do is you have a board, eventually somewhere, if I could stop seeing painted miniatures, that'd be nice. Did anybody just put the board on the table? Here we go. Well, this will do. So this board, I think that'll do. Trying to get this to do, that'll do, fine. I'm sure it appears on the screen, fine. But basically this board is a worker placement board where you put your speech bubbles and do various actions. Some of them are to get technique tiles, which allow you to make your player board more interesting. But others are actions where you're grabbing these insight beads, which are essentially like the things that you use to cure the patients with. They're all generic. It's just basically colors and everything like that. They appear on these like dials, and you just put them on the dials, these discs, these circular discs in front of you, and you level up like level 1, level 2, level 3 in the 3 different colors. And this is basically the currency to cure patients. But on top of that, you also have on your player board an ink pot, which is a really cool ink pot miniature. And when you finish your action, you have the choice of curing patients or moving your ink pot around your board. So if I can find the player board again, and seriously, why is it so hard to find these things? Here we go. So with this, you can basically decide to move your ink pot, and it moves around this left-hand track here. And so depending on where you put your worker on the other board dictates how far this thing moves. And it keeps doing loop-the-loops, but where it lands, it either unlocks more speech bubbles, triggers a reputation bonus, or triggers all the technique tiles in a certain row. But it could also trigger all the technique tiles in a column if you've managed to unlock the entire column. So this is a really cool little puzzle that you've got on your turn, which I really kind of enjoyed doing. The curing of patients basically has each patient has a translucent sleeve layer on top of them with a Rorschach painting and a requirement, like a sort of how many hearts you have to cure. Then another dream card goes on top, a normal dream and then a latent dream. And the idea is that these dream cards, besides having really, really cool artwork from Andrew Bosley, have different requirements for those insight beads I mentioned. Spend the beads, get the reward, which is points or some other icons and that, but also cures so many hearts from the patient. When you get to a certain level, it triggers something called catharsis, which automatically removes the top grief layer from the client, which gives you some bonuses and obviously brings them that little much further to being cured. Once you've cured every single heart, the client then goes in front of you if it's a basic client and gives you a special ability for the rest of the game. But if it's an endgame one, it will give you some endgame scoring opportunities. So you've got a choice of how you want to go about curing these various patients. But the game is kind of a mix of all these things. So you've got a map as well to move your character around, and when you do an action that lets you move the character, you can trigger location actions. But depending how many tags for that location you have among your among your cured patients and various other things you have on your board, you can do the location action multiple times. So as you can see, there's quite a lot going on in this game, and that's one of the slight problems with it. This is an AP player's worst nightmare. There's a lot of options for what you can do on your turn. A lot of options of how you can move your player piece and how you can move Freud. A lot of different bonuses. A lot of different ways your ink pot can move. A lot of different ways to cure clients. A lot of ways to manipulate those beads in front of you. It is a very heady puzzle. And that is the most fun part of the game. It is a very heady puzzle. It is a very entertaining puzzle. But man, this is going to drive AP players up the wall. I can just see this being like, a game that will drag its heels in 4 players. And it did drag its heels a bit. Granted, we were trying to learn a game as we played, so I can't exactly be too harsh on it. If we were more familiar with the game, which I was by the end of it, then I reckon we could get it done faster easily. But the game's not short, y'all. You are talking a 3-hour game here with 4 players, and with less, you could probably make it quicker, but even so. And you're probably thinking, well, Luke, these components look fantastic, don't they? Well, granted, the Vincent Dutrait artwork and the Andrew Bosley artwork is gorgeous. I love it. It is such a beautiful looking game, despite the fact that it's got a fair amount of browns in it everywhere. But it is very nice, and these components are great. But remember that this is basically a deluxe version you're looking at. So this is currently on Kickstarter for like $120 plus shipping plus UK tax if you want to buy with these really cool looking pieces included. This game was good. It's not $120 good. It needs time to stew in the oven. This curing patients gets very fiddly. The fact that there's multiple ways to cure them, you can only cure them one bit at a time, but then you got to think, well, hang on, if I manipulate these beads to do this, or move this up here, or level this one, but then it's the idea that this patient could have 5 hearts on it, but then when you get one, well, it could have, say, you know, a few hearts on it, but then you cure a couple, trigger catharsis, which removes another heart, leaving you with only a couple, even though that your board says that you've got 3 to cure, even though there's only 2 remaining on the card. There's a lot of weird stuff that props up with that catharsis rule. And I'm hoping that this game gets streamlined, because that's the main thing that this game needs. A little bit of streamlining. I think it's got just a bit too much in this game going on. A bit too much to fiddle around with. I could see this being hell for some at 4 players. You know, there will be a decent amount of downtime in that respect. But it will be very tense for the worker placement spots, and certainly there was a bit of that. Oh, did I mention you can also grab research cards that you play out, which give you icons, and when you get enough of them, you can research these book tiles, a bit like Newton, and they give you points, and then people can cite off your various research books in order to do their own tiles. There's a lot going on in this game, y'all, you know, and in a good way. It is a fun game. I enjoyed it. By the time I was finished, I thought, this is a solid game. This could be one of the better games of next year. Maybe. But it's too early to tell. It's also very expensive. I mean, the retail version of this is probably more closer to the price I would expect to pay for this kind of game. But that's not going to include a lot of these really cool components, or any of the expansions or playmats. So you're going to have to pay $120 plus like $20 of shipping and then tax on top of that. This could be $150 plus to buy this game, and I don't think it's worth that at the moment. I'd love to buy a deluxe version when it came out, when I knew the rules were streamlined and set in stone, but it's going to be Kickstarter exclusive, so you've got that whole FOMO thing, the fear of missing out, which I'm a bit concerned about. And Endless Winter is a decent game, but even that has flaws. None of these games are perfect by any means, and there certainly are things that put me off each one, even though I think that they are both very good games. But yeah, that's a lot of money to ask. And I think the idea is that this one is still developing. It needs a bit more time in the oven. It needs to stew a bit longer. You know, just streamline some of those rules. Get it a bit better worded in the rule book, you know, sort out, maybe cut out 1 or 2 of these mechanics or something that are in there just for the sake of having more mechanics. I don't know. Find a way just to streamline it a little bit, you know, because Endless Winter has a lot going on, but that one I felt a bit more streamlined. This one is definitely headier and more heavy than that one is, but you know, having to fiddle around with this little thing in front of you for your, you know, curing patients, manipulating these dials, sorry, not dials, you know, the beads on that circular tile in order to get what you need. It's a bit of a table hog. You know, you're going to have trouble trying to get this everywhere. But it does look good. I mean, some of these pictures are fantastic. Although, shame on you, the expansion for Nightmares has one with a giant spider on it. Seriously, do you arachnophobe much? I don't know, but I could spend most of the game just looking at this gorgeous artwork, frankly, from Andrew Bosley, because it really is some cool, almost Dixit-style artwork. Not necessarily too, well, I don't know, some of it is pretty wacky. I mean, that one has a moon exploding in front of people on the balcony, which is pretty funny. But, yeah, there's a lot going for this game. It is a good game, and I do think it's going to get its fans, and I think it's going to be a hit. But for me, for that price tag, I'm not sure it's a backer. We'll have to see. I don't know. I'm certainly keen to see where this goes, and I think it could do well. But it just needs a little bit longer. Just keep it in the oven that little bit longer, streamline it, develop it that little bit more, because if it released in its current state now, I would have issues and probably not want to get the game. But a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. Take your time, make it great. But just bear in mind those Kickstarter hypers, okay? Alright, this game is not going to be the best game of 2023 in the current state it's in. Be careful with your cash. Be more intelligent with your cash. Consider whether you want the extra content in there. I mean, do you really need the expansion? The expansion's mainly just a few cards, maybe 1 or 2 small mechanics, whatever. Do you really need that expansion? I think there's plenty enough in the base game to keep you going, frankly. Do you really need the playmats? The playmats look cool, and I must admit, I'm a sucker for playmats. But again, $120 plus shipping plus tax. it's an expensive game for anybody in Britain or Europe, frankly. Maybe it's a bit cheaper in the US, you know, you don't have to pay that tax element, but still, it's a lot of money, y'all. I don't think it's quite worth that much money, but then are the components good enough for the retail version? I don't know, but as I say, just be wary about the FOMO that's out there. You know, take my first impressions for what they're worth. You know, take it with a pinch of salt if need be. But as I say, very good game. Just needs a bit longer. Right, well, that's it from me. That's all the new games that I played at Gridcon, sorry. But I still got to enjoy... what else did I play? What else did I play that wasn't new? Not much. Although I did play Ark Nova twice. Yes, there's no convention where I won't play Ark Nova. And I played it twice. Love it, love it, love it. I also played Fort. Got to teach Fort, which was really good fun. You know, they really enjoyed it. Oh, and I also got to play more of Precognition. Another game I need to review soon, actually. I'm close to being able to review it. The new game from Ludonort, where you've got the dual select card system. I've got some interesting things to say about that, you know, both good and bad, but overall I really enjoyed it as well. So it's, you know, there's some cool stuff on the horizon, and I certainly got some great games played. But yeah, Gridcon 3 was brilliant. Gridcon's a fun convention. Seriously, people, you know, if you get a chance to go next year, then please do. It's great fun. It's definitely worth your time. It's just, you know, support Paul Grogan, support Gaming Rules, you know, if you can support me as well, but by all means, you know, he puts in a lot of effort for his videos, and they're good playthroughs, and they're brilliant tutorials. I mean, you try and play Deal with the Devil without watching Paul Grogan's video. I dare you. Same goes for the ISS Vanguard and his rulebook, you know, and, you know, the stuff he'll do for Frostpunk and that. You need his stuff, all right? His rulebooks and videos are brilliant, and he deserves more credit than he gets, you know. I don't know whether it's just being British gets us less views, I don't know, but it's criminal that his channel doesn't get more views per video compared to a lot of other channels that do the same thing, you know. What is it so bad? I don't know, but as I say, support Paul Grogan, support Gaming Rules if you can. I'm already a patron of his, so, you know, take that opinion for what it's worth, but... You know me, I tell it how it is. I put my stock behind, you know, I'm very careful about what I put my stock behind, and Paul Grogan's one of those people. So if you can go to Gridcon next year, it would be great to see you. Be great to meet you and play some cool games. But those are my first impressions of a bunch of games that I played at Gridcon this year. I'll see you next year, I guess. I mean, when's the next convention? Probably BayCon in April, I guess, because I don't go to AirCon anymore. And I don't really do any cons in February, so probably BayCon in April, if I feel like it. Probably, I don't know, I have to make a decision on BayCon. It was alright last year, but it wasn't amazing. But certainly I will make a massive effort to go to the UK Games Expo next year. My brother can only get married so often in his life. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. Remember, if you like what you see, check out my videos on Board Game Geek and please thumb them up. Let's get some of those in the hottest reviews if you can. There are already some videos there that get a lot of people to thumb them up after they're released. I would love it if you could do the same as well. If you spot one of my videos on Board Game Geek, please just go on it, click like. That'd be great. I don't need geek gold, just a thumb would be fantastic. But also thumb it up on this channel, and of course leave your comments down below and let me know your thoughts on these games. Any of these duds for you, any of them hits for you, let me know your thoughts on whether you're thinking of backing a couple of these or whether you think they're good value for money, etc. Just get your thoughts down below. I want to hear what you have to say. So until next time, take care, and always remember, it's only a game, regardless of how much you want to spend on it. Take care, bye for now.